Good morning, everyone. This is Brett Simon. So just thought I'd jump on live and answer some questions. Any questions you have would be fine. I don't have a particular topic to cover, so by all means, let's just take the questions as we find them. So let me start off with DV 2020 and DV 2021. There's, again, no news. About 18 months I've been saying that. At the beginning of my live sessions. I'm bored with saying that. I want the government to make a bloody decision. I want it's not the government, but the appeals process, should be decided. It's gone on long enough. I know everybody's frustrated, including the lawyers on our sides, and I know they're trying to do some things in the background to try and unstick the process. So fingers crossed for that. But we'll see. Anyway, good morning to you all, and right on the time, says Martha. Okay, so I'm going to try and keep up with the questions. Let me just jump into the questions. You're a candidate, says El Haj. Good luck. I guess you mean you've entered the lottery, and you'll check the draw results on May the 4th. So May the 4th be with you. That's a little bit of a pun, if any of you understand my joke. Okay, hello from Ghana. I'm sorry how Ghana is going. Accra are really disappointing at the moment, which is a nuisance, but anyway. Okay, so here's a question. My case number is AS 12090, yeah, so it's 12,000 something, from Nepal. What are my chances of getting a 2NL because there's no more time left? You have a chance, right? You certainly have a chance. The Nepal case is cut off at about 13,000. That's the maximum number that, just under 13,000, is the maximum number issued to any selectee. And there's about 3,800 selectees. So in normal business, they would get to all of those numbers, right? The only thing that we've got going on is whether they're going to move the visa bulletin fast enough to get to your number. And on balance, considering they just increased the number by 1,000 or so, I expect them to get to your number. But it really depends how much capacity the KDU Kathmandu embassy give and how fast the visa bulletin can move. But I would expect, if I had your number, I would expect to get an interview. Any chance for OC 2670? Okay, so let me answer this in the same way as I just answered the other one. If I had that number, I would not expect to get an interview. The case, the visa bulletin just jumped to 1850 in Oceania. And when you look at the numbers, let me show you why I'm saying that. Actually, it might be useful to have a look at that. Let me just show you something here. Because a lot of people, I'm sure, in Oceania will want to know, why am I saying that? What's going on? Okay, so let me present my screen, share a screen, share the entire screen. Okay, now, so what I'm showing you here is the data as of last night, as shown on Zarthisius's website. And as of yesterday, there are 57 cases in transit, which will be about 110, 120 people maybe, roughly about that number. That number should be added to the number of people already scheduled, which is 938. So we have something like 1,050 people scheduled so far. That means if we looked at 2023, they scheduled about 1,500 people. Let me just show you that. They scheduled about 1,500 people in Oceania. Stupid, wrong year, 23. Yeah, let me show you this. So 1,520 people were scheduled. But of those 1,520 people that were scheduled, some of those, quite a few, about, I think, close to 300 of those were scheduled in September. And almost all of those cases had their interviews cancelled at the last minute. And so, really, that's too many. 1,500 is too many, which means that we should see a number around about 1,200 to 1,300, let's say maximum, people scheduled in in 2024, right, in order to meet the quota. And that would be an example of Oceania doing pretty well, right? 1,200 to 1,300 people. We're going to see probably 150 of those, just refused outright. Some will be on AP or 221G. Some won't turn up for their interviews. So you need 12 or 1,300 in order to yield about 850 or 900 visas, which is what Oceania will get. Now, in that case, and considering we've got about 1,050 right now, we only need another 150 to 250 people to be scheduled. And so between the current 1850 number and your case number at 2670, there's just too many cases. There's too many people who are waiting, right? And so I've said for quite some time, I thought the cap, the maximum number that Oceania would get to is around about 2,000. The danger area started around about 2,000. I've very consistently said that, and I have no reason to change my mind on that. And in fact, if you just look at the numbers are bearing out what I have already explained since the very early part of January, at least, probably earlier than that, actually. But so that Oceania to me is very clear, and there's just no reason why your case number would go current. Okay, so I'm sorry for that, but I feel it's better to be honest and clear and so rather than telling you bullshit, frankly, and getting your hopes up for no reason. How is Ghana Embassy doing? They're doing horribly. They just took 20 2NLs in the last few days. Last month, they actually took two main batches of 2NLs, 20 and 20 roughly. So they had 40 cases. So I'm kind of expecting them to get another batch of 2NLs this month. Hopefully they'll take 40. But let's be honest, 40 cases, although that's better than it has been at Accra, that's nowhere near enough. So cases of anything over 10,000 in Accra is probably not going to get interviewed. It's looking very risky for the people of Ghana. One of the worst embassies that we've got, I'm afraid. 84K in Algeria. Any hope? We haven't. So right now, again, let me just show you this data. Right now in Africa, there are 1,149 cases in transit, meaning the 2NLs have been sent over the last few days. It's been quite a busy few days for 2NLs. There's about 2,340 2NLs went out in about 3 days period, which is pretty good, but it's only good if they continue that pace. So 2,500 2NLs in a month is not enough. I want to see 3,500 2NLs for each of the remaining four months. So I'm expecting to see, or hoping to see, another 1,000 2NLs going out in the next few days. But for Algeria in particular, it could be within that number range. But 84K is on the cusp of dangerous anyway, right? I can't say there is no hope for that number. I'm thinking the cutoff is probably going to come around about, for Africa, around about 80K somewhere, maybe a bit below, maybe a bit above. It's going to be in that range. And so you would be in the very last few numbers if you get in at all. I don't think we're going to see a cutoff above 90,000, right? So, you're in the danger range for sure. Algeria is doing well, but you're in the danger range, okay? Thanks for your efforts. 36.5K in the EU. You're crying. Yeah, I understand why you'd be crying. It's not an impossible thing. Similar to what I was just explaining, it's not impossible that we see that number going current. My original calculations said that the capacity should be hitting as early as 31,000 in EU, but I suspected or expected the number to actually get to about 35 to 37,000, something in that range, right? And so, there's always been some risk for your case, and you've always known that if you've listened to me over the last few months. And the most significant thing at the moment is the pace of the 2NLs. Last month, they only sent 245 2NLs for EU. At that pace, we don't get anywhere near 36.5, right? So far, for this month, for June interviews, they've set up 605 interviews for Europe. I'm expecting and hoping to see some more. And so maybe they can start getting to 1,000 a month, etc., for the remaining 4 months. If they get to 1,000 a month or 1,200 a month or something, then your case number has a chance. But if they stay around about 600 a month, then it's not going to get to you. That's basically how it's going to work. So fingers crossed. We'll see in the next few days what they do for this month, and then what they can do next month. They can do a lot more interviews than they currently are. So there is always the possibility until July that they suddenly have some, maybe 1 or 2 months of really big numbers of interviews. So you can never really rule out the opportunity or the chance for a case number like yours in EU to go current. I'm hoping they do something like that. We'll have to see. Okay. Welcome to you from Senegal. Okay, AS 41,000. Do I have a chance for DV 2024? Pretty much no. That just should be very clear. We're not going to get anywhere near that number. We're at 9,000 right now, right? We've had 8 months of visa bulletins. No, is that the 9th month? So there's 3 more visa bulletins. So yeah, we've had 9 months of visa bulletins. We're at 9,000, right? So if we're lucky, I think we'll see Asia cutting off round about 20K. Could be earlier than that though, right? But it certainly won't be 41,000. That's just too high. There's just no reason why it's going to get to 41,000. Okay. Do you think Africa VB will get to 75? If yes, then if yes, those in Nairobi, can they move to different embassies? Frankly, you're better off to stay in Nairobi at this point. Nairobi's doing very well. I know they're a little backlogged at the moment, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Nairobi, who've shown determination to interview as many people as possible. I wouldn't be at all surprised for them to do an exceptional month. They've done it before. They could easily catch up in just 1 or 2 months. We'll have to wait and see whether they do that. But moving isn't as easy as you might think it is, right? If you're already current, if you're asking about 75K, you're not current. But it's just not as easy as you think to move, right? KCC really don't want to cooperate with those sort of requests. So it's harder than you think, and you're at an embassy which at least is trying, right? And there are some other embassies in Africa that are not even trying. They're just not doing a damn thing. So you have to weigh that up. Okay. For Angolan DV Lottery, do you know how many will be selected? The number of people selected for any particular country depends on the number of entries, right? So I don't know how many Angola will get, not very many, but it's kind of a pointless question in a sense. It's like watching 2 spiders crawl along the floor and trying to guess which one of them is going to get to the wall first. Who cares, right? It's like, it doesn't make any sense to sort of bet or gamble on those sort of things, because one or the other of the spiders will get there. Doesn't really matter. So what matters to you is, if you're from Angola, is, are you going to get selected? It doesn't matter how many people will get selected. Are you going to get selected? I can tell you your chance of selection is something like between 1 in 100 years and 1 in 200 years, right? So this isn't a plan, particularly for people from Africa or from EU or Asia. It's not a plan. It's an extremely, lucky thing if you get selected in the lottery. And if you get selected, you have to get selected with a low case number or not a high case number. Because if you get a high case number, then you're essentially in reserve. You're a backup plan, right? And frankly, the emotional distress of the emotion. So all of us, or many of us, have seen you are not selected. That is a blow, right? But it's a blow that hurts for a few minutes, a few hours, maybe a day or two, right? You really felt like you were going to be selected, and then you see that you are not selected. And so that's a blow, right? But if you're selected, it may be months and months and months where you believe you're going to get your visa. And perhaps you don't stumble across my channel, or you don't, know anything about the visa, the DV lottery process, and you go on believing that you're going to be a winner, and you start making plans. And some people have even sold their cars and given up their jobs, thinking they're moving to America, and that's much more of an emotional toil, right? It's an emotional distress that can last months. So, being selected with a high case number, I'm sure there are lots of people listening to this right now that are saying, yep, that's tough. That is probably worse than not being selected at all, right? And it's just, you're going to go through, if you've got a high case number, you're going to have to wait for a year, perhaps even 18 months. And then it may come to nothing. And, so if you win, advice for anybody here, if you win, when you win, first of all, shut your mouth. Don't go around telling everybody in your town or your village or your family or anything else that you've won this lottery. Try and find out a little bit about it first. Think about your case number. Think about whether you qualify. Think about what's going on at your embassy or in your country before you start announcing, that you're a winner and you're moving to America. Please take a few days to just let it sink in and understand what the heck you're doing, and come back and listen to my channel. And I'll try. I will try, and I'm working on a process to gather case numbers from as many people as I can, so that I can give some early information to winners about what the case number ranges are. And until we get that, it's really difficult to know, what is a high case number, what's a low case number, and that sort of thing. So take it easy. If you get selected, as I say, just try and hold your excitement, because you really don't know. Remember, I went through this process. I'm a DV lottery derivative. My wife was the winner in DV 2014. So back in 2013, we found out we were selected in, I think, our second entry. I think it was our second entry into the lottery process. And before I knew anything about the DV lottery process, this is when I actually learned about it. Before I knew anything, I assumed we were moving to America the next week. And I was already traveling to America a lot for work and that sort of thing. So, so I just thought, oh, this is great. My H1 visa, I don't have to worry about that so much. And in the end, it took so long that we had to re-enter the USA on an H1 visa, which I already had moving, and we actually then adjusted status in America because it took that long for the process to go through. So, it's not as quick as you think. All right. Okay. Is there any chance for EU 26? I would be pretty comfortable with EU 26 right now. I would. I think there's a good chance for that number. Do you have any ideas? I've already gone to Europe following the release of the May visa bulletin. Yes, 605 so far. I can show you the numbers. Let me just show you this. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Oh, 615, I beg your pardon. So there are 1,447 so far have gone to Africa. 179 have gone to Asia. 615 go to EU. I was saying 605, wasn't I? I have a pretty good memory for numbers, so I apologize, I didn't say that correctly. 59 for OC and South America 40. This data is directly from Zarthisius's website. You can all get at this data. All I've done is I've taken that data and put it in a pivot table, and nothing particularly fancy, but it's just a good way of looking at it. You can see, when you look at these numbers, you'll see, and the data, you'll see which embassies these 2NLs have gone to, but you then will see a line that says none, Well, that's weird. It's not clicking correctly. That's weird. So you can see none, 1118. Those are cases that are in transit. And the embassy was sent the case probably yesterday or the day before, and they haven't yet marked that case as being received. It's not a problem that they haven't done that. That doesn't mean anything bad. It's just there's a process. First of all, you see the case is in transit. Then it becomes marked by the embassy as being received, and the case becomes ready. And it's only when the case is at ready that we know which embassy got it, right? And so that 1118 number, we don't know where those have gone yet. In Asia, only 117, but Kathmandu is not in here, and so I would expect to see a reasonable number from Kathmandu. EU has 615. You can see the embassies that received those. There's 322 in transit right now. In Oceania, only Auckland has reported having received their cases, so I don't know where those 56 went, whether it's Suva or Sydney, don't know which ones, but we'll see. South America, Guayaquil and Havana are the two sort of major players in South America. They've both received numbers, and I looked at that data, and they're not backlogged at all. There is no backlogged embassy in South America, so you've got no concerns with backlogs in South America. And so it's pretty good for this. Was 3 days 3 days of 2NLs, 2,340 in total, which is pretty good for 3 days. But it's only good if they continue sending 2NLs next week, and maybe send, let's say, another 1,000 or so. I don't want to see another month where they only send 2,500 2NLs. All right. So yeah, that's just an update on the numbers there. Let me just pop that back. Right. I'm not going to try and make a prediction on South America, the final case number. It's you could look at the numbers, and we've got a little bit of increase to go, but I don't think we're going to see much. Well, okay, let me make a little bit of a prediction. I don't think we're going to see much above. I don't think we're going to get above 4,000. I think we're probably going to see in the high threes. Basically where we're at from what I looked at a few days ago. But I haven't done a precise calculation or anything on that, so take that with a bit of a pinch of salt. I did get, by the way, some crazy guy was calling me out and sort of telling me to shut my mouth about predictions on my BritSimon.com channel, my own blog, right? It was so funny. This guy, obviously a complete child, a complete fool, sends me this message telling me to shut my mouth, like I'm going to care about some random dude on the internet telling me to shut my mouth. That was quite funny. And then a few days later, another random dude said that first dude was right, because I published that that complaint to me. I don't always publish the complaints. Sometimes I just delete them before they even become public. I get complaints about the things I say sometimes. I don't know why. I mean, I'm doing all of this for free. I've been doing this for 10 years. Why people get worked up at me, I don't know. But some people do, and they're usually little boys. Little boys where their mummies and daddies haven't done a very good job of teaching them good manners, right? So, and they think it's okay to just jump on the internet and start typing angry messages at people. And so they've just got no manners, right? And no clue, no intelligence. So anyway, so the second guy says, yeah, that first guy was right. Ayub, I think his name was. Ayub was right. He right in everything he said. Except you guys don't seem to understand. I see your email addresses and, more importantly, your IP addresses, right? And so guy number 2, who was saying that the first guy was right, had pretty much an identical IP address from a man, a man in Jordan, same area, same IP address. It's the same bloody guy. It's the same guy that has got such a weak grasp of intelligent conversation that, number one, couldn't answer my question to the first guy, which was, okay, what do you think my predictions have done? Do you think the government are listening to me and therefore not moving the VB because, not issuing visas because of something I said? Like, are you stupid? Is that really what you think is going on, that I'm controlling this whole thing? What difference does it make if I give or don't give a prediction? So I asked the first guy that. He didn't answer. The second guy comes on and says the first guy is right, but the second guy is the same guy as the first guy, just half-wit. But it's so funny that people do that. I have one guy a few years ago who got worked up and angry at me. I can't remember what for. He just got very worked up and angry at me. And so he kept on posting messages to me. But messages that come in at britsimonsays.com are not approved for public. They're not seen in public until I approve them. And so this guy would write all these angry messages and I would just laugh. And at some point I turned a filter on to make sure this guy's messages were going into a trash folder. I didn't even see them myself. And so and one day I look in the trash folder or spam folder. I sent it to a special trash folder. And sure enough, this guy had spent about 4 or 5 years sending me angry messages, like, one after the other, which I'd never answered. I'd never responded to. I'd never given him any reward of, sort of responding to his silly comments. But for 4 or 5 years, this guy's got nothing better to do than to send me angry messages. And all these comments were in there for like 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, there's some mental people out there. So whatever. And my wife sometimes says, you be careful. Some of those mental people might try and find you one day. And, look, I weigh 300 pounds. I'm going to be fine. If some mental person finds me, I'm going to be fine. It's not going to end so well for them, So anyway, just a bit of a giggle. But anyway, let's answer this question. Sorry about that digression. But, I know some of you come here for the comedy. So, so hopefully you've enjoyed that little digression. So, hi, Brett. Got my 2NL, 46K NBO. NBO? Do you mean, no, what do you mean NBO? I can't remember what episode that is. Anyway, I'm assuming it's Nairobi. On Friday last week, but to book an appointment on the embassy, but the process isn't successful. What could be the problem? Okay. So when you receive the 2NL, in most embassies, they ask you to register with a courier. But there's a bit of a delay before that courier knows anything about your case, right? And they actually do tell you that. They say, wait a few days. But some people try too soon and then they can't register with the courier and they get worked up and worried, right? So first answer is just wait a few days. Then the second answer is when you're trying to register your account with the with the courier, you already have an appointment. So you're not looking to get an appointment from the courier. This front-end application process, it's usually US Visa Services or Visa AIS or something. You're not looking for them to set up an appointment for you. You just have to set up an account with them. But make sure you choose your options correctly. When you do the drop down, you'll see a list of all the different options of what sort of visa it is you're looking for. And if you choose the wrong sort of visa, it will assume that you want to set up an appointment, and then it will say something confusing because it doesn't know anything about you, or it'll say no appointments available or something silly. So make sure you select the right option in the drop downs, right? And if a process doesn't go as you expect, number one, wait a few days, and number two, make sure you're reading the list of options correctly. And see if there's something on there that says diversity visa or something like that. Because for that type of visa process, they already know that you've got an appointment scheduled. So you don't need another one, okay? So hopefully that will help you. Will any region go current this year? No. Hi Simon, any chance for OC? Yeah, we already answered that one. Is AS 17K okay or in risk? I already covered that. It's sort of in risk. It's my original estimate said that the cutoff could come between as early as 17,000. So, it's not got better since those estimates. And those estimates are, by the way, based on full capacity, right? That's if the government tries to send out all of the visas, and they don't have to do that. They're not required to issue all 55,000 visas. If they decide they only want to issue 50,000 or 51,000, then they can do that, and there's nothing stopping them doing that. And they've done that more or less every year up until the last 2 years. They've always undershot and underissued until the last 2 years, right? So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't get to 55,000 visas being issued. So bear that in mind. Obviously, in that scenario, then the maximum numbers could be lower than what I previously had said. Okay. Do you think the last two bulletins for Asia will become current? No. Can you do a video for a single parent? Must you have a Form 4 certificate in Kenya system for you to go to interview? Judith, bear in mind, I don't know the laws in every country around the world. There's about 200 countries, and so I don't know the laws. So I can only talk generically. But I can say that if you are a single parent and you've got, you share custody of a child with your former spouse, then in general, you should expect to have some sort of permission to take the child to a different country. And it doesn't matter whether you're female or male. That's not really the point. The point is that the American system would expect that you would have some paperwork that confirms that you have full custody, or that you've got partial custody, but you have permission from your former spouse to take the child, right? And lastly, I would say, just think about that. If your former spouse is involved in the life of the child, and you take that child to another country, is that really the best thing for the child? I don't know. That's a different subject, obviously, but think about that. I'm sure you already have, but think about that too. Okay. But yeah, I don't know what's required specifically in Kenya. Elias, is there a way to know the number of winners from Lebanon for the upcoming DV25? No, we'll only know we'll know that data, by the way, in about July or August. After the draw happens, a few months later, we get a published sort of list that says, here's the country, here's how many winners, here's the country, here's how many winners. In last year's data was published in the September visa bulletin, which comes out in August. So that was, that's when we found out that data. We don't know until then. Okay. Hello. So with the last visa bulletin, is there any hope for cases above 65K? And are they going to reach 55K visas? I just talked about the 55K visas. I think there is hope for case numbers above 65,000. Yes, in Africa. You're obviously in Africa. I think there is a chance for those case numbers. Jason from South Africa. It's Jason from South Africa. He says, like I should know you. Flying into LAX on Monday. Thanks for all the help. Oh, there you go. Now penny has dropped. I think I have seen this one before, but that's awesome. LAX, you've made a good choice. Good place to go. Interesting place to go. You're choosing California. There are some other states in America. There's 50 states in America, but none of them are as good as California. So, I'm a bit biased. That's where I live. But good luck. Good luck, Jason. Hi, Simon. Big love. What's wrong with Dakar Embassy, and why do you think it's doing poorly? I just looked at that this morning, and it is doing poorly. But why that's happening, I don't know. I don't know specifically. I suspect it's to do with immediate relative cases and that they're prioritizing those cases. But I don't know 100%. I don't have inside information to the embassy, so I don't really know what's going on there. But yeah, it's performing badly. It's a shame. Emmanuel, please, can you give me tips as a single applicant on likely questions that be asked? All the time, my answer to these questions about what questions will be asked in the interviews, there's a couple of things I say. Number one, for several years, people have been adding interview experience stories to my blog at britsimonsays.com. So if you Google these words, Brit Simon interview experience, right, you'll get to a link that has hundreds of first-hand accounts of how people's interview went, listing sometimes what documents they were asked for, what questions they were asked, and all that sort of stuff. And I've asked people to say which embassy they were at in their description. So it's really interesting to read those. But as you read those, you should get the understanding that the questions that are asked are really not things that you have to worry about practicing or anything like that. They're very conversational questions. The consular officers are not looking to catch you out. They're just looking to sort of establish some sort of contact with you to sort of test out, have you got a sensible plan? Are you the person that you say you are? And that sort of thing. It's not a complicated interview. So, whether you're a single person, a married person, or anything else, don't worry about what the questions will be. You'll be able to answer the questions because they are just going to be conversational questions. Things like, have you got a plan for where you're going in the USA? Okay, you're going to Arkansas. Hopefully the CEO would say, why the hell are you going to Arkansas? But they probably won't say that because that's more my bias than theirs. But that's what, there'll be a back and forth conversation. Oh, you're going to Arkansas. Great catfish there. That's about the only good thing you can say about Arkansas. I did a contract in Little Rock, Arkansas, awful place. Anyway, so it'll be questions like that. What sort of job do you think you're going to get? Where will you be staying in the first few months? Do you have any friends there? Do you have any family or friends in America? What made you enter the lottery? What? It's just general sort of questions like that. It's nothing complicated. And typically you'll have no more than 2 or 3 questions like that. They occasionally will ask you, they'll delve into some of your documents a little bit, mainly education, right? Tell me about your education. And they're looking to confirm that you are really, telling the truth about the educational documents that you've put forward, or maybe your work experience, that sort of thing, right? But nothing complicated. If you've told the truth in this process, if you're a genuine applicant, there is nothing complicated about this process. It's only when people lie or try and get away with some sort of, fraud or whatever, that's the only time that people have problem in this process, really. So that's why I say always be honest, right? Yeah, has Accra Ghana added 2NL so far this month? Yeah, they've added 20. I think they may have added some more, and I think they may add some more, but we'll have to wait and see. Warsaw is doing quite good according to South Theseus's data. Am I correct? Yeah, I looked at Warsaw this morning. 75. I think they took 75. Warsaw 75. Yeah, 75 appointments for EU region. And I think they took 1 in Africa as well, Africa region. So that's okay. They're not quite to the number they should be. They've got a little bit of a backlog. I don't know why. I would like to see, a little bit closer to the max number. But they seem to be doing okay. I was a bit disappointed, I have to say, with the visa bulletin numbers, where they made Africa current 57,000, for example. I think they could have gone to 60,000 and they could have got a few more interviews that way. 60 or even 61,000. I had made some predictions before the visa bulletin came out. Hopefully you heard some of those. And I was saying that, I expected around about 60,000. So I thought that was a little bit low. I thought Asia and EU were a little bit low. And again, I had given some expectation ranges about those. And in general, the numbers for the 3 big regions were lower than I hoped, right? And why I'd hoped that, I can do the math, I can do the numbers, right? I can make a pretty good prediction. If I wanted to, I could actually predict, pretty precisely. But what I wanted them to do was push it a little bit. I wanted them to go a little bit further than they needed to, because there are some embassies that are able to take a few more and will take extra capacity. And I want the system to, start to use some of that, not in an unfair way. Like if if they went to 80,000, for example, right now, like if the visa bulletin, the next visa bulletin was 80,000, then that would be unfair to people that are at embassies like Nairobi, for example, that can't quickly get there, can't suddenly fill all the cases between wherever they are and 80,000 or Addis Ababa or whatever. And so it would be a bit unfair because the visas would be used at some of the quieter embassies like Monrovia or something like that, where they're actually right up to date with the numbers. And that's a bit unfair, but pushing the numbers just a little bit more than they had is not an unfair thing. It's just a wise thing to try and get as many 2NLs out there as possible, which is what they should do. And I want them to do that not at the last minute. I don't want to see a last minute rush, a September and August rush. I'd much rather see June and July being busy with with plenty of interviews, because that gives people time to go through 221G if necessary and that sort of thing. You don't want to have an interview in September where you may not have time to clear off, the 221G. Okay, so I mean, you'll take it with gratitude. You'll take your chance in September, but it's just a bit more stressful, right? So I'd rather see the work being done earlier. But anyway, are they doing good in Warsaw? Yeah, they're doing okay. I just think they could do a bit better. Like what I did this morning, by the way, I looked at last year. Last year, they were taking in Warsaw, they were taking like 300, 350 per month. So, I'm celebrating 75 this year for 1 month. Like, what's good about that, right? That's why I'm saying they could be taking more. If somebody live out the border for 6 months, request please clearance certificate from that country had lived. I don't know what that means. Sorry, I can't answer that question. My case number is AS13500. Is it safe? From Sri Lanka, tell us your opinion. I can't tell you you're safe 100%, but I would expect you to go current. I just don't know if Sri Lanka will get to your case, etc. I think they probably will, but yeah, I mean, safe at this time of the year is not a word I use very often. Okay, Trek with Franthian. Great to see you again. There's these things that's got me disturbed. I saw a pic of some people who were selected and their picture were not really great. What really happens? Confused. Okay, so their picture was not perfect. Well, people get very worked up about their pictures. Around about the entry time, I get a mountain of emails with people sending me a photo of their face or whatever, and they want me to sort of tell them that face is, that positioning is perfect and the background is perfect and everything else. People get very worked up about it, right? And in general, I would say most people are worrying for nothing. There's a percentage proportion, I think it's 70% or something, your face has to be as a picture, and the background is supposed to be white or off-white, and some people will say, oh my, I've got too much shadow on the thing. Most of the time, people are worrying for nothing, right? Having said that, the single largest reason for holes, which we see, is because of disqualified cases through photos, right? So many of the bad photos that are really bad will stop a case actually even being selected in the first place. That case will become a hole. If you get through that process, then you're probably okay. You don't need to continue to worry. If you were selected, your photo is probably good enough, unless your photo is of the wrong person. You mixed up photos, which I've seen happen, and that's an almost certain disqualification. But generally, yeah, photos is not the reason to worry. Okay, so don't worry about that. Cameroon embassy are not doing well. Is there a chance for 59K? I would say there's a chance. Help me please for who see for me. I don't know what that means. Case number 9K accurate. Any chance? Yeah, you've got some chance. They've issued up to case number 5,500 now. 5538 or something was the highest number. I looked at that this morning. So, you've got a chance. Like, as long as they can do 30 to 40 interviews per month, you could get a case. Major Matata, Hakuna Matata. Appreciate your effort. not asking any question, but let you know that I got the 2NL. Great. Went for the medical, and we're waiting for the interview next month. That's also awesome. Hakuna Matata, man. That's really cool. You ain't no worries. Mamadou, I want to be among the candidates. Well, good for you. Hopefully you will be. Good luck. Good luck to everybody that's entered DV 25, by the way. Good luck to all of you. So can I expect my 2NL within the next 2 months from Nepal? I don't know whether it's in the next 2 months, but but you can wait and see. Traveling pants. For high case number, person is in the USA. In case they become current, would you recommend CP in Mumbai or AOS? Mumbai doing good. AOS might have visas exhausted by the time they schedule. The last point, AOS and visas being exhausted, don't worry about that. That's not going to happen. We're not going to see, they're just not in a position to exhaust the visas right now. We're not going to see that. So we're not going to see like a September 6th cutoff like we saw last year, like where they cancelled all the interviews. We're not going to see any of that chaos. And so, you don't need to worry about that. Adjustment of status is sort of a slower process in a way. But if you follow the advice of someone's mum in the forums.immigration.com forum, you will understand that you can use the early filing policy. And if you do that, then you've got a really good chance, because you can file your I-485 at the latest. You would file it in July, which gives you July, August, September to get your case through, which is fine. You'll be fine. So fingers crossed for you if you do adjustment status. Now, you could choose consular processing in Mumbai. It's sort of a calmer process, because you either get the interview or you don't. But that would mean waiting until the end of July to see if you get the interview scheduled. And that's time that you could be processing adjustment status. So I don't know. I think I would do it AOS, but it's your choice ultimately. Poppymo says, my husband moved to Canada as an asylum seeker. Should I disclose this in my interview, or would it cause denial? I'm 2478K. It's just me and my baby. So number one, Canada is not part of America, right? And your husband isn't you, right? And seeking asylum, that's three things. Seeking asylum is not illegal. It's fine. So number one, your husband has done nothing wrong, right? Number two, you're not your husband. And number three, it's got bugger all to do with America because it's in Canada anyway, right? So, but I would say that if you get current and you're at 78K, so there is an if there, it's not a certain thing. I would tell your husband to get off his ass and come back to wherever you are to attend the interview with you if you get current, right? If you get an interview, and you will go together. And he's done nothing wrong, right? He's only applied for asylum. There's nothing wrong with that. So, I hope you've actually created your DS-260s for both of you and the baby, so that you could facilitate that, right? That's the wisest way to move, okay? Okay. We're waiting for case number SA35 to be current. SA has a problem, slower region. It's not really a slower region. They're doing fine. And the embassies are doing fine. So you've got a good chance at that number. I think you'll probably become current. So fingers crossed for you. For Morocco, any chance for 51K and interviews? Yeah, you got a chance for that. What? I was denied visa because I did prove that I came back to Kenya. Can this deny me the visa? Oh, you were denied some other visa. You weren't denied the visa. You just told me you're scheduled. Because I did prove that I come back to... No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm not quite sure what you're saying there. You've probably tried to move your embassy on paper or something like that. I can't remember exactly what you've done, but no, I don't think you've done anything wrong. Ruth says, I wrote to the KCC to change location of the interview. They asked for proof that I'm currently in that location, utility bills, because I want to change location from Nairobi to South Africa. Yeah, I'm not sure I would do that, but yeah, they're asking for proof. So now you've got a proof. Yeah, you've not really done it the way I would suggest, right? What I would have suggested is that you unlock your case and you change your address. And after you change your address and you've resubmitted, then you casually ask KCC if they're going to change your location, right? They base the location of your interview on your address, right? So asking them to change an embassy is like, you're asking for further questions. Really is not the right way to do things. So, Mr. Me can officially in the US, Shingle Springs, California. Shingle Springs, where the hell is Shingle Springs? Happy to be here and grateful for your support. I've got to look up. Also, why does your rain seem little? It's raining today, actually, Mr. Me. But let me just check out where the hell is Shingle Springs. Where you are? Where is that? Okay, you're about an hour and a half drive from me, up near Placerville. I hadn't heard of Shingle Springs, but I bet I've driven through it. So interesting. You chose. It's a little town you chose. Why don't we have a lot of rain? Well, you've chosen one of the driest parts of California. That's pretty dry out there. And you'll see that California suffers droughts. And right now we're doing okay with rain and water, but for 4 or 5 years we had very severe droughts in California because there just wasn't enough rain. And a lot of the rain that there is goes to watering the agriculture in California. We grow a lot of agriculture in California. So, crops like almonds, for example, take massive amounts of water, and a lot of the water goes towards those crops, growing those crops. So if you drive towards Sacramento and head south, you'll be driving through massive fields growing goodness knows what, right? You've probably already seen that. And so, all of that takes watering. So anyway, good luck in Shingle Springs. And if you get down to the Bay Area sometime, come and say hi. Please, is there a way ACRA can schedule all DV cases this April? I mean, there is a way that they could do that, but it's not going to happen. They're just not going to catch up. I think that's pretty obvious right now. What's wrong with Dakar? I think we talked about that. How's Abu Dhabi doing? I think they're doing okay. I suspect they just got a bunch of 2NLs, but they haven't accepted them yet. So we'll see. But I think they're doing okay. The rain here, yeah, I saw that. There was no new update on Abu Dhabi on yesterday's data. Correct. So I had said a couple of days ago, I think from the numbers, I looked at the numbers, and I think Abu Dhabi did get some 2NLs, but they've not marked them ready yet. So we'll have to wait and see over the next few days whether they mark them as ready. Okay. I transferred my case from Nigeria embassy to Cameroon embassy. Well, definitely get out of Nigeria because they're not scheduling any cases at all. Now Cameroon are not doing well. I want to transfer another embassy. Can this cause a problem with me if I transfer again? I wish you'd checked that before you moved, right? Because it's not easy to move your case. So if you're going to move, you don't want to do it 2 or 3 times. But what else are you going to do? Will it cause a problem for you? Well, it's a bigger problem to not get scheduled. So I don't know what case number is or anything like that. But if you feel you're not going to be scheduled in Cameroon, then yeah, you've got to try and get out of there as well. You can't just wait around and let it fail. So we'll see. Any persons who have attended university in the US, are persons who have attended university in the US required to obtain a police certificate from the US as documentation? No. If you had read the instructions, which I don't think you did, it does clearly say that you're not required to provide any police certificates for the USA, okay? Because they don't need it, because the government can do a query on their system to check any police certificates and police activity in the USA. They have access to all those records, so they don't need you to provide a police certificate. Okay. SA received 11 to NL for Cuba. Example 25. Yeah, but the region is slower. Yeah, it's slower. It's sort of slower, but there's less people. I mean, its whole quota is only 1,500 visas, right? So that's a bit more than 100 per month they're supposed to issue. So it's going to be slower. It's not going to perform like Africa or Europe or even Asia. It's going to be slower, right? So, but when you see 25 2NLs, that's 50 people, right? So that's one embassy. Havana got 25 2NLs. Guayaquil, they got, how many did they get? Yeah, 25, and Guayaquil got 8, right? So there's been so far 40 for the whole of South America region. Well, that's 80 people roughly. So, you know, and they only need to do 100 a month, and it's only the first 3 days of scheduling. So it's not as slow as you think, right? They're doing fine. Relax. Okay. Case number 53XX. Is there any chance for interview in Ankara? Probably. You know, it's about the range they're scheduling. But you didn't tell me which region, but never mind. Do I have any chance for 22K for EU? That comes under the heading of bloody silly question, really, because there are 3 months of scheduling left, and what's the number at now? It's just below your number, right? So why are you asking me? Do you really think they're not going to do, you know, 1,000 case numbers in 3 months? You know, just like, you know, use some common sense, right? AF71K still have a chance? Yes, it still has a chance. If somebody else, I already answered that one. AF144, sir, what the chance? Well, it depends on the embassy, right? If you're at Accra embassy, there's very little chance for that case number. If you're at Nairobi embassy, you're fine, right? So, you know, you have to tell me a little bit more than that. I applied as single with 3 children. If I won the green card and decided to move alone to the USA first, how long it takes me to go back to my own country and get them too? Great question, Jane. I'm glad you're asking, because it's important people understand the difference here. If you and when you say you applied as single with my 3 children, I'm hoping that's because you're actually single, not married, right? It's not like you can ignore your spouse. So presumably if you were ever married, you're now divorced. But anyway, and you listed all your children, right? So there's 2 ways of doing this. Number 1 is including the children in the DV lottery process. And then you would go through the process, you'd pay the fees for them. And I know that's expensive, but you could do that. And you could then get their visa, right? Then you go to America, and as long as they come and follow you within 6 months, then they become green card holders in the USA, and no problem. That's a very easy process, right? The alternative is, if you don't think you can afford to take them through the interview or that sort of thing, the alternative is to file a family-based case in the USA once you're there. But that takes years, right? It takes between 2 and 5 years to bring them. It's very expensive. It's a more expensive process than DV Lottery. It's much slower than DV Lottery, obviously, 2 to 5 years, and it's more complicated. And you may even have to pay a lawyer to help you through that process. I can't help you. You know, you may need a lawyer. So you're going to come to America, and then you're going to have to work your butt off to get the money together to then start a family-sponsored case for your kids to bring them. And that's going to be very, very stressful and heartbreaking for you, and you're not going to perform well. You're not going to do very well. So I would say the much better option is bring them through the DV lottery case, right? And just delay the time when they come. You could also bring them and then send them home. And again, I understand some people think that getting on a plane from, I don't know, somewhere in Africa or whatever, and going to America is like a once in a lifetime thing. It's not at all. You know, when you're in America, you can earn, you know, $1,000 to pay for an air ticket. You can earn that money very quickly, right? So You can buy the kids a round trip ticket. They come over to America with you. Then you send them home to be looked after by family or something while you work your ass off and get yourself a home and everything else, and then bring the kids later. You can bring them then a year after they first entered, up to a year after their first entry, right? So, you know, there's much better ways of doing this than trying to do an I-130 case, a family-based case later on. You know, so I'm glad you're asking the question, Jane. That's what I would do for you, you know, if I were you, rather. Please, in November, I emailed KCC and they said my interview changed. You keep asking me the same question. You're asking this question. Well, oh dear. You've asked this question now twice on my BritSimonSays.com, and I've answered you twice, at least twice. And the thing is, when they email you and they've sent you a letter saying your interview has changed from X to X, clearly they didn't fill in the X to X, right? It's obviously a mistake email. And so what I've said to you on BritSimonSays.com when I've answered this thing is go and look at your ESC page, your the status check page. If you really had an interview arranged, it would be in there, right? And it would tell you the location and everything else. Because basically, I'm believing that they sent you an invalid email, a mistaken email, and that's why I told you in the first time to go check your ESC page. And you came back and you said the same question again. In other words, you didn't listen, and you just ignored what I told you the first time, and then you asked the same question again, and then I got a bit frustrated with you, but I've repeated the same answer. You need to pay attention, is what I told you. You need to pay attention to what I'm telling you. So now you're asking the question the third time here on the live. Now you need to pay attention, and you need to go and check your ESC page and see if there's an appointment letter there. And I suspect there won't be an appointment letter. But rather than keep telling me the same bloody question, then maybe you would come back to me and you'd say what your case number is, what embassy you thought you were going to be at, and maybe the penny would drop and you would realize that the letter you got in November was just a mistake, right? So you probably haven't changed from location X to location X. It's just a mistake. The person who answered you just picked the wrong standard response letter to send to you, right? But because you're not paying attention and not listening to what I'm saying, you're not getting any further ahead. And so now 3 times you've asked me the same question. So please pay attention and listen to what I'm saying. Stop listening to what's in your head and start listening to what I'm saying, right? That's the way to get out of the mess you're in right now, the confusion. And I know you've asked me this question before, by the way, a couple of months ago. You've been asking me this question constantly, but you don't ever seem to get to the point of realization, which is what I tried to explain to you before as well. But oh well. So blessed to bless. You are blessed to bless. I recently got current and had initially sent an email to KCC to transfer my case to Yondi. Can I send a verification letter to know that my case has been processed in if your case is being processed in Yondi? You can email KCC and ask that. Probably the most likely thing is you'll get you to an L, but yes, you can email them, right? What about Lome? Are there many high cases? Is there any chance it's 75K? Lome, funnily enough, is doing well on scheduling. They're almost right up to date in terms of the scheduling up below 52,000. I don't see that they've taken cases so far for June, but they may have done, just not marked it. But I think they're doing pretty well, actually. It's one of the MCs that's doing okay. Okay, DRC, any hope for AF 28K? I hope so. I haven't looked at DRC for a little while, but don't know how badly backlogged they are. But you can go to Zarthesius's website and check that data out for yourself. As of now, does it look to you like EU won't reach 28 to 30K? No. I think EU will reach 28 to 30K. I think they'll exceed that. I think we're going to get into the 30s. I still believe that. But they do need to be scheduling more interviews than they're doing right now, right? So I'm hoping that. I mean, we've got we've got 4 months of scheduling. We've got 3 months of visa bulletins left and 4 months of scheduling because we're in one of those months, one of the 4 months. So there is still time to see an increase in activity, which is what we need to see. If we go on for another 2 months and they're not scheduling enough and the visa bulletin is not moving, then yeah, 28K, might look a little bit more risky, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we'll probably see us getting there. Okay. Referring to numbers, yeah, I just talked about EU. I think I've covered EU pretty comprehensively in this conversation, right? What is a DS260 number? Is confirmation number or the other number indicated on the barcode of the DS260? Right. The DS260 confirmation number you see when you go into your DS260 and you navigate through all of the pages, you go to the end, and at the end there's like a summary sheet and it has the confirmation number on there. That's what the DS260 confirmation number is. You sometimes ask to produce that when you're registering your 2NL. Right, so go ahead and check that out. Okay, let's see. Hi Simon, what is the chance of British for DV? Same thing. I like the British flag there, Dan. It's the same thing as any other country in Europe. It'll be about 1 in 100 is the chance, but I often say that is 1 in 100 years. Because it's just a lottery. It's not a guaranteed thing. It's just like buying a lottery ticket. But it'll be about that. I don't know exactly where it'll be, like a bit more than 100, maybe a bit less than 100, but something like 1 in 100 chance. So if 100 people entered, one of them would be selected. That's roughly the thing. Or if a single person enters every year one time, then they need to enter for 100 years consistently to be chosen one time. That's it. That's the other way I try and explain, because I think that second way, me saying 1 in 100 years, makes people realize, oh, that's a lot. That's like that. Okay, so it's a lottery. It's not a plan, right? Now, for Oceania, funnily enough, the chance of selection is much higher. It's about 1 in 20. And so if there's a married couple in Oceania and they both apply and they've both got a 1 in 20 chance, then the chances of them being selected is actually very high, one or the other being selected. In Oceania, which is just an unusual case where they have less selectees, even though they've got a very low number of visas available to them, they just have low number of entries, and therefore every entry has a better chance of selection. And that's how it works. Okay. Was eagerly awaiting for your live. Do you think Nepal is doing great after the recent VB up to 85? I don't think it's doing great. I think it could be doing better. There's about 184 cases from Nepal in every 1,000, roughly. It's a bit more and a bit less. It's in that range. But so when they increase that by 1,000, they're only revealing 184 cases or 180 cases thereabouts, right? And so I would rather, and I know Kathmandu can do like 300 interviews a month pretty easily. So I would rather see, I would rather see a bigger increase per month for Nepal. I would rather see for the 8,500, I want them to get to, let's say, 10,000 for the next month, maybe 10,500, maybe 12,500, maybe the month after that, and then maybe it stays at that range, 12,500 to 13,000. Maybe it's in that for the last couple of months, right? That's what I'd like to see, but there's various ways they can do it. AS27K, will it be current in current months? No, I don't think it will. Will Africa turn to be current? No, I don't think it will. Wondering if AS 19,000 is still possible, or should you forget about it? Last year was much better in terms of feasibility moves. If I said to you, forget it, you wouldn't forget it, right? Why would you? So, when you say, should I forget about it? Well, you're not going to forget about it. You're going to be watching for the next 4 months. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. So, so the reality is you just have to wait and see, right? It's possible that the visa bulletin could still get to that number. I mean, it's risky, but it is possible, right? So you have to just wait and see. Hi, Rabbit could you talk about getting an apartment once there without credit history and all the American stuff? Briefly, I'll cover that because I'm about to publish some videos on this sort of post-arrival stuff. You don't have a credit history, which can be it can be a difficult thing for some apartments, but not all apartments. So, for example, when I came here, what I did was I showed as much credit history as I could from the old country, as it were. I had a significant deposit I could put down, and I found a private landlord instead of a company that was willing to rent a house to me. And it was a brand new house. This guy had bought it from the builder and was very keen to get someone in, and so I was the perfect tenant for him. And so that's what I did. I did that within a couple of weeks of moving here. So it's certainly possible that you can get, particularly from private landlords, that you can get an apartment or that sort of thing. You may find it more difficult if you go to an apartment complex where they've got maybe 100 or 200 apartments, and they have set rules, and the people in the office are just looking for people who match their requirements, which means you've got to have a social security number and a credit history and all those things, and it's difficult to deal with those sort of companies. So it's possible to get an apartment. You just have to choose your landlord wisely, right? A private landlord, some individual, a person that owns maybe a few houses, just like me. I've got a few houses that I rent out, and so someone like that is going to be a more accommodating, more flexible landlord than one of these large companies, apartment complexes. Okay. Okay. VB movements in light jumps like 5,000 for Africa is good. Huge jumps like 10K plus creates backlogs to nothing. David, I think I know this process probably a little better than you. I've been doing this for 10 years or so. I understand the point you're trying to make. Not well, but you're trying to make it. Huge jumps are not like 10K. 10K isn't a huge jump. But that creates backlogs for nothing. In some embassies, yes. And if you were paying attention properly to what I had said earlier, was I said, look, I know there are some embassies that won't be able to sort of cope with those larger increases, which is what I was advocating for earlier. But there are other embassies that can go to whatever point, right? And so by pushing the VB a little bit more, we use more sensibly the overall capacity. And what I was saying when I said earlier, not in an unfair way, is because I understand that the case numbers should be issued in the case number order roughly, but I also want to see the capacity being used. So I'm like, a couple of steps ahead of your thinking, David, and that's okay. But yeah, I'm right. All right, let me just take a couple more questions here. Charlotte says, how many people in your guest do you think will be selected from the UK this year? Considering the UK has not had any entries for 20 plus years, right? My brother, funnily enough, got his green card in the 90s through the DV Lottery, along with a couple of friends of his. There's a whole story about that, but I won't go into it now. But several of my brother's friends from the UK all got their green cards all at the same time in the very early versions of the lottery. But that was pretty much the last time that the UK was in the lottery because of the way that the rules work, and which I've explained in previous videos. But what it means is that this is the first year for over 20 years where the UK has been able to enter. And I don't know what publicity happened in the UK to, how many people entered, how many people knew about it. I just don't know. So I have no way to make that guess. I don't know how many people will be selected. It could be quite a low number. It could be quite a big number. I have literally no idea, right? So I'm very intrigued. I did watch the traffic. the traffic to the website where the DV lottery was held. And I did notice there was quite an uptick from people in the UK, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it had enough entries from the UK to get a significant number of selectees. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll know a little on May 4th. Some people will know that they've been selected, but we won't have good sort of statistics yet. We'll know the country numbers, as I mentioned earlier on this video. We'll know the country numbers in July or August. And so that's when we'll really know. Okay. Okay. Can you fill the DS260 without the passport? Yes, you can. You don't need the passport to fill in the DS260. You can use another ID. I'm from Tunisia, Africa. In my country, there's only 221 selectees. The problem is that my case number is 90K, but I filled up my DS260 after 2 days releasing the result. Is there any chance to receive the 2NL? And thank you very much. The whole thing is about your number at 90K. You've got a very high case number, and I don't think 90K will become current. I could be wrong, but I don't think it will become current. And it doesn't matter that you filled up your DS260 after just a couple of days. Actually, do me a favor, Medjid, I'd be interested. Have you checked with KCC that your case is processed? Because I do have a point to prove about that. Some people think DS260 processing is in case number order, and it isn't. I know for a fact it's not. It's cases are processed. DS260s are processed in the order they were sent, but then there's a difference in the timing of one case to another, of how long it takes to process that case, and that confuses people. And so they think that DS260s are processed like just in time, just ahead of the visa bulletin, which is complete bullshit. And it amazes me that people think that's even a thing. But anyway, your case number at 90K is obviously a very high case that may never get current, but I bet your case has been processed. And so that would surprise some people. So if you want to check, that would be interesting. Let me know on a future. You can email KCC and ask whether it's been processed or not, and then let me know in a future video. So fingers crossed for you. I don't think you're going to get current, but it's not impossible. And so I can't say 100% no, right? Okay, let me just see if there's any more interesting questions. A lot of, is my case number going to be current? I've answered a lot of those. Okay. Hi, Simon. Just a question. I find that a few people that won the lottery were previously in the USA. Does it really make a difference? It makes absolutely no difference. Whether you've been to the USA or not makes no difference. The draw is completely random. Okay, it doesn't matter what day of the week you enter. Doesn't matter whether you enter at the beginning of October or at the beginning of November, where in the whole entry period you enter. Doesn't matter where you've come from. Doesn't matter whether you're single, whether you're married. Doesn't matter whether you have kids. It doesn't matter whether you have a dog. None of that matters, because it's just a random draw. They just take all of the entries in a particular region and they jumble them up and they give them all a number sequentially. They give them all a number, right? In a random order. And then they take the first N number of cases, and those people are the initially selected entries, and then they go through those and they disqualify some of those entries. And eventually in May, we see the results, right? And it's just a random process that has got to that point. So it doesn't make any difference whether you've been in America before or not, right? My wife and I had been in America. We had worked in America for a long time. We were selected, but it had nothing to do with the fact that we'd already been to America. There's a lot of people that have never been to America and win this lottery. And there's a lot of people who've been to America and win the lottery. So it makes no difference. Okay, I think we'll call that a day. It's been quite a long session, 1 hour and 19 minutes. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate your time. I hope I got to your question. If I didn't get to your question and you still want to ask the question, go to BritSimonSays.com and I will answer it there, right? And sometimes your question will sort of like not appear straight away because I have to go and approve your question. for it to appear to the public, sort of thing, even to you. But I do that every single day of the week. I go through and answer these questions on my blog every single day of the week, as I have done for the last 10 years, with very, very few days where I've missed that. Very few days, right? If I've been really sick, or if I've been traveling and unable to access, the internet or something, very rarely. So every day for 10 years, I've been answering questions for random people on the internet, and I'll answer your questions, right? So go ahead and answer your questions ask your questions there. Do subscribe to my channel, please. Give me a thumbs up on this video if you liked it. If you hated it, you can give me a thumbs down on this video. It doesn't matter. I'd just like to hear from you, and then leave me a comment if you'd like. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thanks. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.